Hi, I'm Steve Sellers. I'm the writer and co-creator on White Druid and Michael Nero. And today I want to talk a bit about character flaws. Um, Now, when you're kind of looking at characters and how to design characters, a lot of it is about motivations, what they want, what the basic concept is, and all of these sorts of things. But I think that you really need to kind of delve a little deeper, maybe, into where a character's weaknesses are, because a lot of times that is what's going to drive the story, is where the characters are at their worst, what their personal problems are. And when we're talking about flaws, I'm not necessarily saying that they all have to be deeply messed up people, although over in the Omen verse we definitely write deeply messed up people. But just to say that every character, even characters like Superman or Captain America or aspirational characters like that, they all have their shares of flaws, and you have to write for those flaws. So, what do I mean by that? So, when you're looking at a character, you want to find out basically where they, as a character, are lacking, what they have to learn, what they have to try to overcome, what is their personal struggle. And one of the books I think that highlights this very, very well is the Wolverine Limited series by Chris Claremont and Frank Miller. I point to this one all the time, and it is a book that really kind of inspired me in terms of character writing. And the reason for that is because it plays directly to Logan's character flaws, which is basically that he's somebody who is an animal deep down who is trying to overcome that and be more civilized. He's impulsive. He has a hair trigger temper. He's angry all the time, and he is violent by his nature, and he's trying to restrain this because he's not a bad person. He doesn't want to hurt innocent people. He doesn't want to hurt those that he loves, particularly Mariko Yoshida in this story. So the entire story is about his transformation, personal transformation, trying to overcome that anger, that violent side, that animalistic side, and trying to make peace with it. And so, he overcomes this by fighting a villain who is kind of like the opposite of that. And so, all of this is him trying to prove himself worthy of the woman he loves. And finally, he does end up achieving that. But a lot of that is because of his character flaws. So what you want to do is you want to look at what is it about that your character that they struggle to overcome. With the Omen verse, there are definitely characters that we do explore that with. I can use some of my own examples. With Michael Nero, it's his arrogance, particularly. He's also somebody who likes to be a little bit blunt as well. He's somebody who is constantly likes to show off like how smart he is. He's somebody who also likes to basically call people out on things, and he doesn't have much of a filter. He's constantly seeing the truth about everything, and he can't help but call it out. It's just who he is, and he likes to do this. And this is basically his struggle is to learn not to be that guy. To have some restraint about calling people out on these things. To have some restraint in his ego and to hold it in check. Because he's not always he's the smartest guy in the room, although he is a lot of the time. And that's where his relationship with Lou O'Shea is so important, because Lou is the one person who can call him out on this credibly, because he can speak to Michael Nero as an equal, and because of that, and because of that father-son relationship that they have, Lou is able to restrain Nero's worst impulses, and that's important. Now you don't always want to have that character there, and it doesn't always have to be a foil character to do that, but you do have to address those character weaknesses, those character defects. Okay. Now with Marius in Guardians of the Lamb, I wanted him to basically be Captain Rome, more or less. I wanted him to be kind of like a cultural hero in some respects, but he's brought down by blind loyalty, and that's where his story in the first issue of Guardians comes into play, because ultimately, while he thinks he's doing the right thing, he thinks he's serving his country. He thinks he's serving the Empire and being a good soldier. But the problem with that is that being a good soldier in this instance means doing terrible things to innocent people, as we see in the first issue. And so his arc is about taking those blinders off and being forced to confront the worst side of himself, and being able to see what he's fighting for accurately, and then try to essentially from there decide, okay, what is it that I'm fighting for, and what's important to me, what's important in my moral values, and then where do you go from there? And we're going to be seeing that in future issues of Guardians, for example. So we have those things. With Blitz, in terms of my last example, her character is that essentially she is a naive, impulsive idealist. And while ultimately what she wants to do is good, she doesn't think before she acts a lot of the time. And when you're talking about somebody with super speed, that kind of impulsiveness is a detriment. Especially when you combine it with the fact that she's not that worldly. She thinks that she's been around the block, but she doesn't know as much as she thinks she does. And so you want to confront her, a character like that, with all of the things that she's not prepared for. With the aspects of the world that she doesn't know anything about. So what you want to do is to tailor your story to the character flaws of your character, as a way of moving them forward. Okay, and that struggle will definitely change and evolve over time. Depending on who their character is and what lessons they need to learn, and so you're always kind of looking for conflicts and villains and stories that basically play to those flaws, play to their worst elements, and to see, hit them where they're the characters where they're at their weakest, and then in that way they learn and they change and they grow. That's the ideal. So it should be ideally a learning struggle, and sometimes they can fail. It's perfectly okay every once in a while for a character to go too far and make a mistake. There was a Captain America story that I had read recently by Mark Waid where basically he becomes an icon, and there's this huge Cap mania fervor that hits after he comes back from Heroes Reborn. And what ends up happening is that he starts to believe his own press a little bit too much. He gets a little too certain of himself, and then he makes a mistake that costs him, and then he has to come back and fix that, which he does. If you look at Superman the movie, the same thing with Christopher Reeve's Superman, because he's somebody who is proud of his gifts, but he's trying not to express that. And so what ends up happening is that he gets a little too cocky because he's been dealing with pretty easy pickings up until he meets Lex Luthor, and then Luthor hits him with the kryptonite, and suddenly it's like, okay, I can't use my powers to get out of this. I have to find some other way to get out. And so the story then becomes, how do you get out of the trap? How do you do you deal with this problem that you never had to deal with before? How do you overcome that? And then what do you learn as a result of that conflict? So ultimately, that's really where you want to go with that. And with character flaws, I would just say, think about your own personal issues. What have you struggled with? You can always use that as a means of creating a character. Or you could look at, other people that you know, or other people that you've seen, or other characters that you've seen, as a way of looking for flaws that could be interesting to tell a story around. So you want to be able to explore those things and move forward, with your characters and with your stories in that respect. So hopefully that'll be useful to you. I hope that that kind of gives you like a starting point to think about, how to design character and how to design stories around character. So until next time, this is Steve with Omen Comics, signing off.